Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of my podcast, Chaotically Ambitious. I'm your host, Sarah Al-Kredis, and for today's episode, we're going to be talking about a topic that hits really close to home for me personally. So, you've probably heard the phrase, a jack of all trades is a master of none. And I actually came across this saying a while back as I was scrolling through TikTok. It wasn't the first time I heard of this saying, it was just then that I began getting, the inspiration for this episode and kind of thinking more deeply about this topic. And since the last episode we were kind of on the topic of introductions and just having so many different interests and being chaotically ambitious, I felt that this topic or today's episode was very fitting and in relation to that because this phrase is thrown around usually as a warning to not spread yourself too thin. But here's the thing, it's been on my mind quite a lot lately because, well, in a sense, I kind of feel like a jack of all trades. I've always been that one person who's been interested in so many different things at once. One minute I'm diving deep into astronomy and physics and just fully believing that this is the field of study I want to pursue. The next I'm, laser focused on writing, especially writing poetry in Arabic, and I'm itching to release my own book. It's like I keep bouncing around between interests, just not fully focused on one thing. And this podcast also, I get to explore a million different topics, but then it makes me truly begin to wonder, am I spreading myself too thin? And actually, just last week, I was watching this video on TikTok about a student who was sharing her stats and how she got into her dream school, and it was like she was working her entire life towards this one passion, perfecting this one skill, getting into all the right extracurriculars, doing all the different hobbies related to that, and it got me thinking, I don't really have that singular focus. Sure, I'm not completely hopeless. I do have, a rough idea of what I want to major in, what school I want to go to, but at the end of the day, it's like I don't have that singular focus. And I'm not the type of person to pour every ounce of my being and energy into one thing, and I just bounce around, as I said, picking up bits and pieces from each interest, and it's very exciting because you get to have a broad skill set, get excited about many things, but it also gets quite overwhelming at times, and it makes me, wonder if I'll ever be truly great or exceptional in one thing. So I started wondering, is being a jack of all trades really such a bad thing, or should specializing in one thing be kind of the normal? So yeah, we're gonna dive into all of that together. Alright, so let's start off with a little bit of history. The phrase jack of all trades, master of none actually has a longer version that not everybody knows, and I was honestly surprised when I first saw it because you'll see it goes jack of all trades, master of none, but oftentimes better than master of one. Surprising, right? Because it completely flips the entire meaning, and because the original phrase wasn't meant to be a diss, it was more about celebrating versatility. But the way we see it now, it's kind of telling us how being versatile means you'll never be quite great or exceptional at one thing. But, the extended version honestly shifts the entire perspective into one that's embracing the fact that a person is a generalist rather than a specialist, versatile and adept at many things. And let's take the 16th century for an example. People were being heavily celebrated and embraced precisely for the fact that they didn't only stick to one thing. And, also the Renaissance period, for example, people like Leonardo da Vinci were also celebrated for the very same thing. He was an inventor, an anatomist, a painter. Talk about a literal jack of all trades. But talking about this, we're looking back at the Renaissance period, 16th century times. But now, somewhere along the way, our culture kind of shifted. Specialization became the golden standard. Society started to equate success with being the best at one thing, the top neurosurgeon or the best star athlete. But okay, sure, specialization is amazing in some areas because, imagine if you had a surgeon and he was only quite good at their job, mediocre, that's not good. But with all that being said, at least people like me or us who love dabbling in a little bit of everything, questioning where do we fit in this kind of standard? So yeah, with that being said, I want to get personal here for a second. I've always been that person who's been curious about a million different things. I think we've already established that. In school, I like the sciences, chemistry and physics, but I also liked English and literature and writing and stuff like that. So it gets especially hard in high school because you kind of have to choose your track, whether it's more science-oriented or literature-oriented. I personally chose a science-oriented track because I do have a rough idea of what I want to major in or pursue in the future, and I felt as if that better fits and aligns with my goals. And obviously, this is not to take away from anyone who chose a different track, because I feel like everybody has to choose what aligns best with their goals and their hopes for the future. But yeah, even with that kind of aspect figured out, I still have a hard time deciding between things, because it's like every time I learn something new, it opens up this door to a fascinating world, and I just can't resist walking through it. Like, I want to, try a bit of this and a bit of that. So yeah, it gets a little bit hard. And here's where it gets quite tricky, because sometimes when I look around and I see people or students focused or laser focused on a certain passion, like whether it's sports or medicine or art, it kind of makes me feel like, am I falling behind when I don't have that singular focus? And especially this past couple of years in high school, where we're all, trying to get research papers and getting into these global competitions, and seeing these other students, focused onto that one thing, and I'm just hopping around, it makes me feel like, it makes me question whether or not I'm on the right track or I'm falling behind. And it's like people are perfecting their craft and I'm just dabbling. And it's like, with that, it makes me think, or a little voice in my head goes, you're wasting time, you're never going to be great at anything if you just keep hopping around. And it's like, I'm sure I'm not the only one. Like, can you guys relate to that? Because it's this like constant push and pull between following your curiosity or wondering if, you're not measuring up to what society thinks is, successful, or people who have chosen one path and actually stuck to it. Yeah, so with that being said, let's look at the bigger picture. Philosophically speaking, the debate between specialization and generalization isn't something new. It's been going on for quite a while, and ancient Greek philosophers like Plato, for example, suggest that a society works best if people have their own specific roles allocated to them, and they just follow their roles in society to make a more cohesive society. But then you've got thinkers like John Stuart Mill, who suggest or believe in the importance of a well-rounded education and bringing, or the value of diverse perspectives. And honestly, I think both sides have a point, because specialization is amazing in fields, and it's essential in fields actually that require precision, like medicine or engineering. But then think about the different breakthroughs that can come when creativity from different fields collide, and just the incredible achievements that could be made when different perspectives are being put on the table. And I think Steve Jobs once said something about, creativity is just connecting the dots. But if you only have one set of dots to work with, how much can you really innovate? So here's an example, and we're kind of circling back to astronomy. The Apollo program that sent humans to the moon actually wasn't just the work of rocket scientists. It was kind of a team effort between specialists and generalists, which included rocket scientists, mathematicians, engineers, artists, and even psychologists. So it was kind of a team effort of both, as I said, specialists and generalists. And this makes me think that it's not about choosing one over the other, rather than finding a balance between depth and breadth to create a big achievement or just accomplish something that is a combination of all the different perspectives and just skills and values and everything being put into one, basically. All right, so with that being said, it leaves me with a question of, where does that leave us, the Jacks and Jills of all trades? And I think the key to solving this inner battle or inner debate is redefining what success looks like. It doesn't have to mean being the best at one thing. It can mean, being adaptable and curious and just being able to bring a unique perspective to the table. And in today's world, where industries are rapidly evolving and constantly changing, companies are looking for T-shaped people who are able to have a deep expertise in one area or one field, but also able to bring unique perspectives to the table and just collaborate across all disciplines. And that's basically what we're calling a jack of all trades. So I feel like this realization has been freeing, because that means I don't have to choose between, one passion over the other, or just, between my passions and hobbies and interests. It means I can pursue all of them in my own way, even if it doesn't fit, society's neat little boxes. It means that this is what I define as successful, and it honestly feels pretty empowering. All right, so before we wrap up, I want to leave you guys with a bit of a challenge. take a moment to think about your own life. Are you more of a specialist or are you a generalist? Do you like focus on one thing, or are you kind of dabbling in between interests like me? And so if you're a specialist, I encourage you to, look at something outside your comfort zone. Maybe read up on a subject you've never read before, take on a painting class, try coding, or just, simply get out of your comfort zone. And if you're a generalist like me, I suggest there's honestly no other way to go about it than just embracing it, because sure, you can maybe focus on one thing for a change or try and read up on one subject instead of, the many interests, but at the end of the day, you can only just embrace it and be proud of the fact that you have a broad skill set and just embrace the uniqueness you bring to the table. So yeah, at the end of the day, if you're a master of one or a jack of all trades, what matters most is that you're growing, you're learning, and you're staying true to yourself and just embracing the fact that what you're good at, whether you're a specialist or a generalist, is fulfilling to you, and it's what you define as successful and not what everybody else defines as successful, because what we said is the key to solving this inner battle is just redefining what success is. So as long as it's what seems successful to you, then you're doing something right, and that's all that matters. Alright, so that's it for today's episode of Chaotically Ambitious. I hope this conversation has given you something new to think about, and if you liked it, please share it with someone who would love to hear about this and just get a little bit of inspiration. And I would love to hear your feedback. If you have any comments at all, you can leave them down below, or you can reach out to me on any of my socials. They're all linked as well down below. I am on Instagram, and I am on X as well, or Twitter. So you can find that all below, and yeah, we can reach out and keep the conversation going, and I really, really hope you enjoyed. And yeah, until next time, bye guys.